Yes, here we are. I believe we are live. Uh, and this should be the panel about self-publishing. And I'm the moderator, Brenda Clough. And guess the first thing that we should do is to force all the panelists to introduce themselves because that's just traditional. Angela, you want to begin?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Angela Yuriko Smith. I publish Space and Time magazine, and I've been independently published since 2011. I just realized today that tomorrow will be my 10th anniversary of self-publishing. And yeah, so I'm kind of excited. I actually have that horrific book here, so I can show all the things not to do when you start out.
Oh, very good,
yeah,
very good.
yeah, like 16 looks too big on your screen, but it is not. It's just don't do 16 font unless you want. Yeah, anyways. But that's me. You can always find me at spaceandtime.net, which is our magazine's website, which we also self-publish. This is it. And then my blog is angelawysmith.com.
Great. Doc, you want to pick up the ball?
I can do that. My name is Doc Coleman. I'm a steampunk author, and I have, yeah, come on, do it right.
Oh, look at that.
There we go. I have independently published these two books, The Perils of Prague, the first in my Adventures of Crackle and Bang series, and The Shining Cog, which is a collection of short stories. And I've also published a couple individual short stories as well, but I'm currently working on The Kindred of Kali, which is the second book in the Adventures of Crackle and Bang series. And as the leader of a local writing group, I've had to give out a fair bit of advice about how to go about self-publishing.
Yay. Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy Van Kemp. I'm the creator behind No Wasted Ink, a blog for science fiction and fantasy readers and writers. I have indie published 2 books. One was a Regency historical, and I'm about to indie publish its sequel in Christmas, or around Christmas time. I've also published a poetry collection, which is kind of a different beast. So I'd like to be able to discuss publishing poetry at some point in the panel if there's time. And my poetry book, my debut collection, actually got nominated for an Elgin. So I guess I must have been doing something right. I'm also been trained in the 20 Books group, and this is a group of people that train indie authors how to make a living with their books. And I'm happy to discuss some of the techniques that I've learned along the way that have been beneficial to me.
See, this is a really, really good panel here. We have some smart people on hand. My name is Brenda Clough, and my only qualification is I write novels. That's almost the only thing I really can do. I do not do anything else well, and that includes PR, publication, formatting, or marketing. But I cleverly hooked myself up with a co-op Bookview Cafe where we could sort of all pool our ignorances and acquire coverage that way. And as a result, I've actually done okay with this. And I sort of did the thing I really could do. I wrote novels. I have 11 novels coming out this calendar year, 1 a month. They began in January, and you can, the first one, like drugs, the first one is free. You can go to bookviewcafe.com and find it under my name. I've written, these are 11 neo-Victorian thrillers of the most melodramatic. And so if that is your cup of tea, I can meet your needs. So maybe we should begin. What do you tell your someone who says, I have a novel and I think I should self-publish it? What do you tell them? Angela, what do you tell them?
I would ask a lot of questions. The first, what skills do you have? Can you lay it out? Because that's pretty expensive. Mm-hmm. Can you edit it? And don't think that you cannot edit it. Like, you have to edit it. You either have to pay for it or be able to do it yourself. And editing yourself is really, really difficult. And even I edit for the magazine, I still have people edit me because you can't see your own mistakes. That's why we make them. And cover art, it has to be good. Can you do that? Do you have those skills? And if you do have all those skills, absolutely awesome. If you don't, can you pay for them? And do you realize that the beginning books that you do are probably not going to make that much? So it's frustrating to spend $2,000 in a book and, you know, get really super lackluster sales because nobody knows you yet. So that's what I would ask.
That actually is a really good point. Is a lot of this stuff you can hire done, and you should consider it. You know, you don't actually have to do it all yourself. You can either hire it done or, you know, call upon friends to help you do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that also has its cost. You know, after a certain point, your proofreading friends will hide from you and never answer your emails anymore. But you could definitely hire everything done. What about you, Wendy? What advice would you give?
Well, I actually teach a class on author platform,
Good.
and I tell people flat out, start your platform now. Don't do it after your book is published. You have to have it started. I would recommend even 6 months before minimum. When I did my first book, The Curate's Brother, I had actually started my blog and had started my platform almost 2 years beforehand. Everyone thought I was crazy, but when I launched my first debut book, you know, out into the wilderness, I actually had decent sales. But because I had earned them through my blog, through connections, through coming to conventions, people kind of knew who I was. And because they knew me, they were willing to check out my book. And whenever I sold a book in person, I would always very politely say, please leave me a review. So my first book also has not a huge number of reviews, but enough to make it a view a little bit more favorably on the Amazon search engine. So if somebody lands on it, they have a little bit of feedback there. But yeah, I would say if you have a book, I would develop your platform and set up a launch sequence, which is a very complex thing. But if you get all your ducks in a row, you actually, even with a first book, could make some money.
What about you, Doc?
So if somebody comes to me and says, I have a book and I want to self-publish it, the first thing I'm going to ask them is, what are your goals for the book? Because that's going to tell you a lot about whether self-publishing is actually good for you, or if you're just wasting your time and you really need to look at a traditional route. If somebody wants to publish their book because they want to see their book on bookshelves in the stores, then don't self-publish, because the traditional publishing and distributors for traditional publishing have pretty much locked out all the bookstores. If that's part of your goal, you won't get there. If you want to sell ebooks on Amazon, we're golden. If you want to sell ebooks and print copy books, but you don't want to touch Amazon because they are evil incarnate, you can do it. You're going to have a rocky road, because however evil they may or may not be, they have the majority share of the market. And so far, we don't have a good competitor for them. But for me, the reason that I went the self-publishing route is I wanted to have control of my properties. I knew other authors who went traditional with small press and ended up publishing a couple books and then having a property locked up in a contract dispute where the author or the publisher didn't want to publish the next book, but they also didn't want to release the rights of the books that they had. And getting that dispute resolved cost this author so much time that by the time he finally got the rights to his book back, he'd already started another successful series, and it wasn't worth his time and money to see about trying to put out the third book. So for me, it's about control over characters and stories that I love.
I would say that if you were there are ways to protect yourself in the contract stage in traditional publishing. And if you wanted to do that, or if you wanted to fight about it with your publisher, what you do is you go to SIFWA, and they can sort of essentially help force the publishers to do right by you to some extent. I don't know if you've seen the issues that Star Treks and Star Wars authors are having with Disney. That's been a big thing. The author associations have been going up to bat on that. I don't know if they can make the mouse kneel or not, but in lesser entities, they probably can. Amazon is indeed the big player in the industry, and what Amazon will allow in covers will control your cover choice. If they don't like guns or blood, well then fine, you're not doing guns or blood, because you're going to want to adjust it for Amazon. So I guess there's just like a lot of inside knowledge that you just sort of have to acquire, and it has become very, very complex over time. But clearly, it has opened up the industry a lot. We don't all have to go through Tor or Harper and Row. You actually have an avenue outside of traditional publishing. Does anyone want to
severely lowered the bar of for getting into publishing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Angela.
I was just going to say, I know that there tends, and I'm probably going to get hate mail for this, but I love Amazon, because without them, I could not have been a self-published author back in 2011. They were the ones that started the whole thing with Create Space. They're still innovating. I have this. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but this is like the most exciting thing ever. Amazon is doing hardbacks.
Oh,
this is brand spanking new. Yeah, there's no dust jacket, but that's a future thing that they're talking about. And paperbacks, with the flaps, the paperbacks that fold over, they're talking about that. So yes, I know I'm going to get hate mail for this, but I love them. I mean, yes, they're not.
I appreciate the tools. I appreciate the tools that Amazon has made available, but at the same time, I know they are not my friend.
Yeah, but they do pay the most royalties.
You have to be prudent and wise about it, but they have really completely innovative, completely altered publication in our lifetime. And so you sort of have to go with what you've got at this moment. And if you have written a book that really has market potential, I would say, if you are let us say, if you're J.K. Rowling, let us say, and if you've written a book that has real marketing potential, I would indeed go to a traditional publisher and cut a super deal with them, because somebody like Tor or Bain or Macmillan, they will have the powers that you do not. They will have art staff, they will have PR, they can get you the foreign editions, the Italian translation, the Spanish translation, the Chinese market, that you as a personal independent author probably cannot do without a great deal of energy and brain damage. And if you can do that, that's great. And go for it, get that Chinese edition, find a translator. But it is, if it is the kind of book that would have traditional legs in traditional publishing, it's easier to do that. But that's assuming that you are not J.K. Rowling. If you're not somebody who's guaranteed to have a big sale in the traditional market, Michelle Obama, a good example. If Michelle Obama wrote a steampunk novel tomorrow, would she have problems finding a publisher? No. But you and I, might have this difficulty, and that's where self-publishing comes in, because you don't have either that enormous power of a bestseller, or you don't have fame and notoriety that makes for that power.
If I could interject, I mean, self-publishing has opened up the world to fringe voices.
Yes.
It allows anyone who has some kind of statement, or they just want to write a fun book or whatever, it gives them the power to do so. And, you know, frankly, I've been looking at the comments, and someone says, oh, is this just something you do when you first start out and then seek a publisher? Actually, no. There are traditional published authors that I know who are waiting just patiently until they can get their rights back, because they know they can make so much more money as an independently published author. They want to be independent. They do not want to go the traditional route. Frankly, I don't recommend it. There's a lot of power in being an indie. You control all aspects of your book. You have good quality control. All the things that a traditional publisher can offer you, you can do yourself, or find a small group of people to pull together with to do. Again, I'm with the 20 Books group, and we are trained to do all this stuff through workshops and whatever at our conferences. And it is not as difficult as you would think. I formatted all my books. I did the cover of my first book. I hired an artist for the cover of my second book. It was both ways, was very easy to do. It really depends on your time and artistic talent. I illustrated my book and put the illustrations in the book myself. I mean, it was
That is
my
formatting
program.
chops.
Yeah, but I did it myself, and I used software that was free. I did not pay anything to format my book. I did have to read some tutorials, and I do have some artistic abilities and technical background, but it is not impossible. And I think formatting itself is easy enough to learn. It is not a difficult thing. Really, the hard part is just the marketing and having the capital maybe to pay for ads to get your book in front of enough people to purchase it. But if you have written a halfway decent book, I mean, not a masterpiece, even a halfway decent book, you can make a living as an independently published author. So yes, go ahead.
I can chime in. There are some people who definitely want to be traditionally published. They like the services that the publisher provides for them. But what you're finding more often in author circles is that people are looking to be a hybrid author, where some books they send to traditional publishing and other books they do themselves.
Right.
And in some cases, like mine, that may be because of concern over rights for particular things. I mean, I've got a YA book that I'm planning that I intend to go traditional on, because they understand that market better than I do, and I don't want to do that research, but I've got the story that I believe fits, and I want to see what they can do. You've got other older authors who have established themselves in the traditional world who now want to do fringe projects, and their publishers won't let them do it. But if they go independent, they can publish what they want and see if the audience is there. And of course, there are people who start independent, build a following, and then go knocking at the doors of traditional publishing and say, I've got a following now. I've got a new book. This is how much you can make publishing my book. And then you've got the diehard independents who either philosophical basis don't want to feed the publishing a monster, or my favorite case is Nathan Lowell, who started off independent publishing, built out his sci-fi share series, and when traditional publishing noticed it and came and said, we'd like the rights to your books so that we can publish them around the world, he looked at what they were offering and said, no thanks, I can't afford the pay cut.
Yep. I agree with that, Doc. I mean, 100%. You really can do it yourself. It doesn't happen overnight. It will take a heck of a lot of work. It does become a full-time job. It's not glamorous, but it can be done. And if your dream is to make a living with your books, I'm here to say it is possible. You can do it. And it just takes learning. It takes persistence, and it takes being able to write a good book. Being independent does not mean you skip any steps. You still have to write the draft. You need to go editing. I do recommend hiring an editor, and that money comes out of your pocket. I think going to somebody to design a good book cover is also a good idea. That's several $100s. But these are necessary things. These are things that a quote unquote publisher would do, but they take such a huge cut of your profit. I mean, even though you're paying maybe even a couple $1,000s up front for your book, in the end, you recoup that and then you end up making more profit if you go indie. But it's a process. It's, you know, coming out to tables and meeting people and shaking hands. It's becoming a public speaker. It's learning to sit your butt in the chair and getting the job done and not being distracted. Learning to manage your time. It's, you know, it's not, becoming an indie is not something you can learn from one small panel here at Balticon. It really is an intensive process, but I believe it is one that is well worth it, and one that is within grasp of any reasonably intelligent person. You just have to have the desire and the dreams to do it.
And the other aspect is that a lot of publishers are not doing as much marketing as
They don't do anything for
for
you.
No.
their low-level authors. So that's pushing starting authors and low sales authors to go into the independent market where they can get more of the take-home thing.
And I actually have some, like, a different insight, because I started out solidly independent. When my 2018 Bittersweets came out, it was the only independently published book on the Bram Stoker finalist list. And I got offered 2 publishers, and an agent approached me after that. And they were like, you know, we want this. Well, then 2020 hit, of course, because that was in 2019 that the awards came out. And I was kind of dancing around like, oh, should I do this? Am I going to ruin my career if I don't sign, you know? And fortunately, 2020 kind of took that decision away from me, because I was so distracted by everything. I did nothing until September. And then it was kind of like, oh my God, I just have to publish something. These are ready. Just go, which is one of the beautiful things about independently publishing. You can make that decision yourself. But back in, I guess at the end of 2019, somewhere around that time, I realized by only being independently published, I was hurting myself, because I was creating a vacuum, a stagnant pool of the same people were buying me and reading me, but there was no new people. It was harder to get the new people, and the same people were visiting the blog every day, same people on my Twitter, and I love them. You need that core group. So I started doing short stories and releasing those everywhere rather than just publishing them myself, to get that new readership in, which was awesome. But I still am very, like, I am actually looking at doing an anthology that I may release to a publisher. I've got a couple publishers interested in taking that on. And that's that stagnant thing. That's super hard for me to let that go, though, because it's kind of like, why would I share? You know, I can do it on myself. But the power of self-publishing is, oh, and I actually have an example. I just got this hours ago in the mail. This is a book that Lee Murray and I just wrote. Mark my words, just came out. We decided to write this 7 weeks ago. We were going to teach a class in Stoker's, and we said, hey, let's get our notes together. This is over-accomplishing people. This is like really disturbing, kind of. But we said, let's put our notes together for this class, and we'll have them in a handout. And then at, I think, about 10,000 words, or, you know, it's like approaching 15,000 words, we said, well, it's really a chat book. It's not really a handout anymore. And then at 30,000 words, we were like, well, this is actually a book now. And then at 50,000 words, we just published it as a book. But it took us 6 weeks. Now, I do the layout, I do the cover art, unless my daughter, who I raised as a graphic artist, that's another good place to get people to help you, is you just have them and raise them to have these skills, and then, you know, they're forever in your debt. So that has worked out well for me. Thank you, Kira.
Recommend the birthing method, huh, Angela?
I do. It's the long
college tuition that kills you, though. College tuition doesn't, you never earn that back.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, she's self-trained, so that was handy as well. So I just kind of went the whole cheap route. Like, you have to train yourself, and work for me for free for life. So,
Good.
Cultural model, right?
yeah,
You
exactly.
raise children to work the farm.
Yeah,
Right,
going
yeah.
with what Wendy said, prepare in advance. You know, you have to prepare way in advance with that method.
Yeah, 18 to 20 years.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but that
Oh.
is the power, is you can decide you're going to do something and then publish it. But once you start doing it, you kind of have a system down. When we decided to do that, it's like, oh, okay, yep. And then we need to run it through these editors. And then we need to, you know, so.
Well, you did all the steps that a publisher would do, but you know enough to
Mhm.
do it. And I
Mhm.
actually agree with publishing short stories in magazines
Mhm.
and your poetry and getting the word out to a wider market. I think that's very smart. And in a sense, that's kind of the last bastion of quote unquote traditional publishing that we still do. I do know in the poetry community, independent publishing is still frowned upon. And if your book,
Really?
yes, they are. They're hardcore traditionalists. If your poetry is not selected by somebody, then they poo-poo and think that it's nothing. I personally think that's an elitist kind of way of thinking,
It is.
and I don't agree with it. But I am part of the community, and I have to kind of bow to peer pressure in some regards. So I actually do work with a publisher for. I've actually been publishing an anthology. My first one just came out in April. It's called Eccentric Orbits, and it is a speculative poetry anthology. But the publisher approached me and asked if I would do it for him. He was very hands off. He let me basically handle everything. I think he realized I really didn't need too much, but I still went to him for some guidance. I was 50-50 on a couple of the poets that were in the anthology and wanted to know what his thoughts were, and he convinced me to include them. And in the end, I think that was the right decision to make. So I was really grateful to have that feedback. And then, of course, once the book was done, I did the formatting, because formatting poetry is very difficult, because you have to almost put it in PDF form, because it doesn't really work well with the ebooks. Now, I
Right.
did the planets as an ebook, but I was very careful when I did my placing in the book, and it was all very regular. It's all sci-fi coup, so I could center it on the page and do that. So it worked, but that is not the case for the majority of poetry. So the anthology only comes out in PDF form or in a paperback. But it turned out great. The poets are all happy, and I'm actually thinking I might go back to the publisher and do that. Now I could maybe publish this myself with my own imprint, but frankly, I think he does a good enough job. He has a few contacts that I don't. I notice he's getting his books into Walmart and other places, so I might stick with him and maybe even approach him to do a chapbook sometime. But when it comes to my novels, I'm hardcore indie. I don't really think anyone has anything to offer me that I can't do myself with a prose book. So it's funny, I'm straddling two worlds in writing. The science fiction, fantasy, novels, any genre of fiction, which kind of has its own rules. And then I have the poetry community, which is running on a whole different kind of set of expectations and rules as well. And learning the two and trying to balance them has really been a challenge.
Lawrence Watt Evans is one of those authors with a foot in each world. He, of course, has been published by Del Rey for a long time with his fantasy and science fiction, but then he began writing a series of YAs, and they're adventure novels, and they're set in the 19th century, I believe. And Tom Derringer is the character. And so he's been self-publishing those simply because his agent said, well, I don't know if anyone would be interested in publishing these. And so he said, ha, and you're able to do that.
Yeah, there's like what, 4 billion people on the planet. Yeah, just think of the numbers. I mean, among the literate of our world. I mean, even if a tiny 1% or half of a percent, that's still hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, and if you're making $3 or $4 a book and you sell to 100,000 people, I'd say that's a pretty darn good return. I'd be happy with
Oh
that.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't be discouraged. You can find an audience and a market.
Yeah. And especially, I do poetry as well, Wendy.
Mhm.
And I will say I am a poor poet. I really don't sell much poetry, but I do it because I love it. You know, fiction is good, but nonfiction is amazing. And I started out as a newspaper person. That's how I started writing 20 years ago.
Yes.
And yeah, with this book, I was like, oh my gosh, why does nobody want my fiction like this? But we sold, I think the royalties were like $100 yesterday. Yesterday was the first day that it was available for Mark My Words. So that has never happened. You know what I mean? I was like, yay, Bittersweet sold great, but you know, it wasn't $100 the first day.
Now, also, Angela, you know more now. You have a book or two under your belt. You knew what to do, how to pace yourself. You also, for your textbook, have a built-in market with your teaching. So you're going to see a lot of sales.
And that's why. And it's already having this is the other thing that's different now. Already having the platform. It's nonfiction, you know, all of that. But that first book, I think I've published like 50 books since that first one, 2011. But the first one, I made so many mistakes. I actually had it here because it's so funny to me. And ironic that I find it the day before it's about to turn 10.
Wow.
You could always put out a new edition and fix it.
Oh, I did, but it's still a first book. You know, they're never great, I think. We think they're great until, you know, but this was it. And I went with a bigger font because I wanted it to be thicker because it's a novella. And I had that big concept of, you know, it has to be big. But then that's what happened with when you enlarge the font, you get grandma book.
Yeah.
So it was a nice thick book until I opened it and I was like, oh.
Yeah, there is an entire separate thing about making the book look professional. And I think that is worth putting the money into simply because readers expect the book to look a certain way. And you really shouldn't mess with that. One of my horrific, well, I can't say it was horrific. I was a judge for the Philip K. Dick jury. And this was a couple years ago. And I would say that the Philip K. Dick is for original paperback science fiction published in that year. So it has to be original paperback science fiction. So even if you put away all the fantasy novels and the poetry anthologies and the junk that rolled into my life, we had about 100 submissions that were actually eligible for the PK Dick. And of those, I would say about half of them were self-published. Some of them were professional and some of them were not. And some of them were really, really not. You're talking about forgetting to put the gutter into the pages so that when it's bound, you lose the beginning or the end of each line. That kind of level of, oh yes. So you shouldn't do that if you can avoid it, because I actually have them somewhere here on this shelf, but I will not show it to you because it's depressing. There was a book of which, if you held the cover up in your hand like this, your thumb would cover the title, which was printed in agate type, 8-point.
Oh my goodness.
8-point italic, okay? Oh, and by the way, as I don't know whether this was an omission or whether it was a deliberate marketing ploy, but there was no author. There was no author on the spine. There was no author on the title page. There was no author on the Amazon page. How can you buy this thing? Hello? How do you buy this thing? You know, isn't the goal of the exercise to sell it? No, apparently not. No.
That being said, I did once forget to put myself as the author on a book, and I had to unpublish it because there was no way to fix that. And I don't even think you can do that now. I think that you just can't.
Somebody did. I have the copy of it here. I'm not going to show it to you because it's depressing. It is possible if you publish it badly to completely cut your throat. And you kind of don't want to do that because you've already spent a lot of money, I assume, on, you know, the cover and so it would be better not to do that. And that's where I'm hoping like courses and books like this would actually help people not to do that, you know.
I totally agree. As an indie, your reputation is everything. Do not release crap onto the world because it's going to come back and bite you. And excuse my French, I'm sorry. I'm a little impassioned about that. do a good book. Learn your trade. I mean, there are tutorials out there on the internet. You can buy a book on it. You can go to your local writers group and ask advice. I have done all of that. You know, when I did my poetry book 2 years ago, I originally had a completely different cover, and I took it to an editor friend of mine, and she goes, "Oh, no, no, you can't do that. It has to have a blue planet." And I went, "What?" And she goes, "Yeah, because it'd be serene or whatever." And I'm thinking, one, she doesn't know poetry, and two, she's not even really into science fiction. But I took her advice and I decided to do a complete search. And lo and behold, I looked at a whole bunch of science fiction poetry books, and I'd say 3/4 of them had a blue planet on it. And I went, "Holy cow, who knew?" So I decided to change to a new cover. I just happened to find this designer with the cover, and it was a red planet, but I do have poems about the planet Mars in the book. And it was very striking and quite beautiful. It had all the elements that I wanted. It was very inexpensive. And I went, "You know what? There's my book cover." And I switched to it, and everybody raves about my book cover now. But you know, I did steps. I didn't go, I changed my course. I took advice. I got some professional opinions before I put my book out, and it has made all the difference. So if you're out there and you're either starting to write a book, you're not sure what, you know, how to be a professional author, to go out there and sell book after book, take your time, learn to do your job right. And it's out there. The skills are out there. I would invite you to join the 20 books group. I got to admit, they're a little capitalistic, and sometimes it does kind of off-put certain people, but they know their stuff and they give it all away for free. They're not there to fleece you for anything. They're just there to be helpful. And just take it with a grain of salt, go in and just listen. And I think you will learn a lot, and then go forth and find other people with other opinions and advice. Form your own core beliefs. Don't just, you know, go to someone and say, "Tell me everything," and don't do that kind of stuff. Learn the stuff yourself and become confident in what you do. And I think you will find the success you want will come. It may not come overnight. It may take you several years, but you know, no good things, I think, come without a bit of work and elbow grease. And that's actually part of the fun, to be honest.
There's a lot of resources out there. I mean,
Mhm.
Kindle Direct Publishing has the KDP forums, where there's a lot of other independent authors right there asking questions and helping people find answers. There's tons of writing groups on Facebook, so you can go and shop around and find one that you're comfortable with. The biggest things that you can do are know your own limitations, in terms of what you can do yourself and what you're going to need to hire someone for, and um, and to create a good product. I mean,
Yeah, this is a panel about the publication process. It's not actually a book panel about writing a good book, which
Right.
is a very different panel somewhere else.
But
This
that's
is-
the first thing you have to do.
It is the first thing you have to do. And frankly, if you can't do that, it becomes difficult to make any money, because you can go on to Amazon right now, go to Amazon Kindle and look at the free books. There are people who put the free book, you know, there's all kinds of weird stuff, you know, people with collections of sermons for religion that they have made up themselves, people who are telling a story who have no idea how to tell a story. You can do that. Don't do that. Don't be there.
Don't do that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there's plenty of people out there already.
The thing is, if you go forward and get yourself a professional book cover, and the cover is a very important element of publishing a book, make sure that you hire an editor, that you have done due diligence to make this book the best that you can, that it's as professional looking as you can. And the fact that you're an indie publisher at that point will be a moot point. People, when they see quality, they know that it's quality, they will be more apt to buy your book because of that. But this does take research. It takes time. It does not happen overnight. But again, it is doable. And it's, learning, at this day and age is not exactly expensive. You don't have to go to college for this. Just learn from reputable sources.
Google is a wonderful resource for these
Yes.
things. And a lot of these things are just, there's so many like groups who just pass knowledge around. So you can find this stuff online, but it's important to know what you're doing. Until you've done this, you don't recognize that the book is laid out badly. It never occurs to you about margins until you see a book with no margins, and then you realize why they are very, very, very.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And having the right software to do. I have a suite of programs that aid me. I use, I just bought Affinity Publisher, which is kind of almost a copy of InDesign for layout of PDFs. I'm still kind of learning it, but it's good. But you can do a PDF in Word too. I mean, when I did my poetry anthology with the publisher, we did everything in Word. So that worked out too. But find yourself tools. For instance, when I do my formatting, I actually have an old method. I create the original ebook out of Scrivener, which is what I use to write the book. But then I use a program called Sigil, which opens up the EPUB, and it allows me to look at it page by page. And I can actually check the code of the book. And if there's anything that looks funky, I can just tweak it right there in Sigil and get it fixed. Again, it does take some technical know-how, but there are free tutorials out there, which I use to learn how to use the software. And once that's done, I use another free program called Calibre or Caliber, one way or the other you publish it. It's actually a library program for books. It's another free program. And with Calibre, that's my pronunciation, I create all the copies that I need. I can get a Mobi with that. I'll have the ebook with that. I create a text. I create a PDF. And I have everything ready to go that I keep in files. So if I need to send an ARC to somebody, I just have it there on my computer and I can take care of that. When I send the stuff to Amazon, usually this system creates such a clean book. I mean, I really never have had a problem putting it up into any system because I've gone through it and made sure everything is as clean and tight. There is no extra code, no extra whatever. It's just exactly what I want. But again, this comes down to learning the knowledge, having a detailed kind of manner, being systematic, and having pride of workmanship, I guess I would call it. I mean, in anything I've ever created, because I'm an artist as well, I do illustrations of my poetry that I sell as prints. And before that, I was an artisan jeweler working with metals and things like that. But at every step of the way, I've always had a pride of workmanship. If I don't feel that it's good enough to represent me as an artist, it does not go on my table to be sold. And I feel that way about my books too. Now, I'm not perfect. I mean, I'm sure there's a typo here and there and whatever. Every book has it, no matter what you do. But I have done everything I can to make a clean, professional book that I hope people will enjoy. I do know my first book has done really well for a debut book. Again, it's not a perfect book by any stretch of the means, but I've had hundreds and hundreds of people buy the book. And at cons, they come forward and tell me how much they've enjoyed it. And I really feel that it was a successful book. I have the sequel to this book coming out this Christmas. And once again, I'm going through that process. I'm going through edits, I'm going through beta readers. I'm getting everything done. I'm going to hire an artist to paint the cover. These are all the things you do as an indie author to create a professional product, something that you can be proud of. And I'm hoping I'll have as much success with book 2 as I did with book 1, crossing fingers. You never know, really. But I have done everything possible on my end to create a product that I think people will enjoy if they like that particular genre or type of book. And again, I'm not a rocket science. If I can do it, you can do it. It's just a matter of learning.
I'm keeping an eye on our time here, and I'm wondering if we have to go to questions, but I'm going to ask Doc a question. I'm reading it off here. What is the question you wish you would have asked at the start of the self and official publishing?
The question I wish that I would have asked?
Yes.
What is the question I wish I would have asked?
See, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I knew a bunch of independent publishers when I made my decision, and I pretty much talked to them. It really comes down to it is I wish I had a better idea of how much time it takes, especially what kind of schedule I need to set, because I kept thinking in terms of setting a publishing date and working back from that and figuring out deadlines for doing things. And my experience was that it's completely backwards. First thing you have to do is finalize the text. Because every time you change the text, it pushes everything else out.
And then you have to have the discipline to say, no, I will never change it again, that it's over, it's done. Because otherwise you keep on going back and changing it.
Yeah. Good examples here. When we were looking at the proofs of Perils of Prague, we found a couple words. I had hired somebody to do my cover and my layout. And on the back cover, we found some things where he had mistranscribed stuff. It still made sense, but it wasn't the right word. There are also the inevitable misspellings that slip through until you get to proofs. And a big part of the issue was that because I was dependent on him and he was busy, because he had his whole other business, it became a choice of, if I want to keep my publishing date, I have to ship the book as it is and fix it later. When I went and did The Shining Cog, instead of hiring somebody to do layouts, I bought a program called Vellum, which it's Macintosh only, but it's a very useful tool for doing your own layouts. It has some limitations in terms of what you can do. It's definitely not what you want if you want to put everything just in the right place. But one of the things I liked about it was, with one push of a button, I get the ebook and the print version from the same layout. And I did The Shining Cog in Vellum, and the only problem I had with that was when that the dimensions that my cover artists for that used were slightly off, and the cover was too large. So I had to add pages to the book to make the book fit the cover. And that was something I could do. I copied a chapter from Perils of Prague. I stuck it at the end. I stuck in more advertising stuff. I made it fit.
Okay. I'm going to go down to a question that Angela, I know, can answer. Someone has asked about the quality of hardbacks and other hardback self-publications. And you have been doing this. Tell me about it.
With the Amazon in particular, if that's what they're talking about, I would say it's awesome. I haven't really worked with Lulu too much, and I am talking fast because I know we're running out of time. I haven't worked with Lulu, but I've seen horror stories. I'm not saying anything bad about Lulu. But in particular, it was a person whose cover was somebody else's book, and he had it shipped to a convention, didn't open the box before he got there. And so he had, at a Veterans Memorial convention, he had butterflies on his book. So it didn't go over too good. So I've never had a problem with Amazon. I've been very, very happy with the quality of the books. I will say they have the matte cover. I never get the matte cover anymore because it just doesn't hold up very well. It curls, it shows every little greasy fingerprint that you didn't even know you had grease on you. And as far as the hardback is concerned, this is our first hardback because it's still in beta. I am absolutely thrilled. It is the most gorgeous book. I know some of the things they're talking about doing, you know how you have to pay for color interior, even if you only have one page. They're talking about having that now as a page by page. So you could have a color page that you pay for and everything else you're paying for at the black and white price. That was super exciting. I saw the paperbacks with the little flaps, I thought was exciting. And I can't remember what else I saw on that little sneak peek thing, which hopefully it's okay for me to talk about. I didn't sign anything. Hey, the hardback is right there, and that was the big beta thing. So, but yeah, I've been super happy with the quality of it. And honestly, a lot of small publishers, and technically we are a small publisher ourselves now. We LLC'd with Yuriko Publishing, named after my grandmother, not me, so that we could do all the taxes with the magazine and get everything protected. But I still consider myself a self-publisher. And most small publishers really are still self-publishers. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we have to be proud of it because we continue that mindset of we're not as good as by trying to keep it a secret. So no, I will tell you, I am self-published, even though we have that LLC. That's a tax thing. But yeah, we actually have started publishing other people's books too, because it's fun. Why not?
And you already have the technology and you have all the knowledge to do it. So why not do it?
Yeah, we're doing it anyways. And I have no life at all except for this at this point. So I quit my library job so that I could do this. Yeah.
Yeah. The hardest part is the accounting, because you get one check in from Amazon from your sales, and you have to figure out how much is mine, how much.
There is a really good extension, I think they're called. That's how technical I am. Called Book Reports that I started using about 2 months ago. That has been amazing. It goes with your KDP and tells you in real time what your sales are per book. Very enlightening because you can look at your entire history. And so I did, and I found out one of my best-selling books was a children's book that every Christmas sells really good that I don't even think about, like never even. I can tell you what, Christmas Spiders 2 is coming out this Christmas. But I would have never even, I don't even think about that book, you know.
Yeah. Angela, I have heard of Book Report. I don't use it. But I believe you can, even if you're wide, you can use it. They don't just do Amazon, they do all the other book sellers as well.
I think Book Reports does just Amazon, but there are other extensions that do wide.
Okay.
But since I just primarily publish on Amazon right now, because they do their extended distribution, so I just let them do the extended distribution, if I can say those words. So that's why I just use Book Report. But I know there are like 3 really good ones.
Okay, cool.
Yes, bookkeeping is a major hassle. And unfortunately, you really sort of have to do that, particularly if you have other authors you're dealing with. And the whole tax thing is a separate thing. It is worth it if things get complicated to find a tax professional. Do not get IRS information from the internet, or find yourself a person who has, the letters after his name to actually do that, because you can unpleasant things can happen to you if you're like really fuck up with the IRS.
I will just next month. We actually are having a tax person and a lawyer coming on to do an open question and answer through space and time. So
that is a good idea.
Yeah, they are awesome. They help us. It's our lawyer and our tax person, and that's how our bookkeeper, and that's how we got them in there, because we're like, if you want to be paid by us, no, you'll do.
They really need to. That is an important thing for if you're running your own business. You have to run it like a business that includes the taxes, the expenses. You have to do this stuff because now you are a professional, and you have to do it that way. You can't. What Doc was saying at the beginning was true. You have to think about what it is you're trying to do. Are you just going to push one book out and then you're happy? And a lot of people will do that. It's just a memoir of my one fantasy novel, and now I'm done. Or are you starting a business? And if you're starting a business, that's a different attitude than a one shot.
Okay. Brenda, I saw that our tech has just posted that they're going to have to take the room away from us.
Okay. So, all right. We're good. Thank you, everybody. I think we have completely run over our time.
I just added my contact info in the chat. I'm going to go over to Discord for anyone who wants to continue this conversation.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone.
everyone's
Thank you
going
for the
over
question.
there, and you can also, I'm sure you can Google on our names, or you can go over to Balticon site and find us there. Thank you so much, audience and
awesome.
participants. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Bye. We could
Guys,
have easily
take
gone
care.
3 hours.